At the start of this process, we as a group initially wanted to create a short film with a different idea. However, due to circumstances of the number of members in our group, we needed to create a documentary. I found this very challenging as I have no experience in documentaries and the pre-production is very different to a short film. There is a lot less to do, you don't have scripts, and I needed more research into how to produce the documentary as well as I would have for a short film. At the beginning of brainstorming, we had many potential ideas for this documentary. The main method we wanted was to view Rosie's story through cinematic reenactments and numerous cutaways. This was so we would experience creating a short film despite doing a documentary. We felt like this would interact with the audiences more whilst having Rosie's interview overlap the scenes, so you can visualise everything much more the way Rosie had experienced them. Along this came a lot of ethical issues I as a producer had to consider and work around. From the original draft Run Order, I encountered the unfortunate problem of shooting in a hospital. I wanted to capture the moment in the hospital with the family members specifically. Having Rosie and her partner Ashley shown here would be way too hard to watch and would be extremely difficult for Rosie to interact with exactly how events occurred and how she was feeling. Not to forget having to watch it all again, she would feel like she was repeating it. Many areas were like this, so reenactments were very restricting, and I was comfortable with the scenes being finding out she was pregnant and Rosie being in the group, and many more ideas that would cause no harm. But as a producer, you find concern in any of these scenes, and despite being good for the film, it may come with backlash. Mentions of the court case they are facing right now with the hospital also didn't take place in the film because anything said would have been damaging. Towards budgeting for this project, initially we wanted actors, locations, props and costume for the reenactment scenes, which would have taken up a lot of the budget. Since these reenactments didn't make it into the movie, we only needed a small amount for the budget to fund travel expenses, a hotel locally close by to Rosie's home, food expenses, and expenses for extra help such as a sketch artist and guitarist. So throughout the project, I had to keep up to date with the budgeting paperwork and add necessary changes, as well as make any booking arrangements for our expenses. As there was not a lot to be paid for, as our shoot was simple, we did not need to outreach for any funding pages such as Indiegogo. Instead, we used our own personal allowance. The shoot went very well. I arranged the time and estimated time of the finish. While setting up, we helped each other. We all contributed to make suggestions of where lights could be and testing out the camera angles and much more. When we arrived at the location and met the family, we spent some time with them before setting up any equipment. This was a nice way of introducing ourselves and having normal conversations to lower the professionalism, as I felt this was very necessary. I had a lot of responsibility to arrange how the day was going to pan out with suitable requests of things we could shoot for cutaways and how we were going to film the interview. I provided a script prior to the shoot. As scripts are not used in documentaries, I just used it as an outline of how the edit will appear and what sections of the interview will be discussing which topic. This helped me on the day to be able to talk to Rosie and Ashley with what to say. I briefed them each time before every section of the interview and made sure they had breaks very frequently so they can have a breather, as it is a very emotional topic. I made sure they were able to do it in any way they liked, so looking anywhere in the room. So for example, they were able to look at me, Tom, the camera, or even switch it up. I did not want them to be pressured into looking to the camera or by the lights too much, as it can appear very intimidating and it can become difficult. We chose to use a small camera as well because a big camera is also very intimidating, and we wanted it to be as smooth as possible. Briefing them involved telling them what they could talk about. For instance, talk about before the birth, how you were feeling, etc. I did not feel comfortable providing interview questions because I wanted the interview to happen in a similar way as a conversation would. It feels much more open, comforting, and questions appear very impersonal. I made them feel comfortable to be able to stop whenever they felt too emotional to film, so despite having loads of breaks, they were able to always stop whenever they felt necessary. Other than the interview, we all discussed with the parents of what we were able to use for cutaways and extra pieces of images that we would have access to for our documentary. They got out boxes of personal items, and I suggested to go to the park, which was a walk away after the shoot was finished. Since it was only still daylight, it was possible to be able to get more shoots. This gave us the opportunity to film some cutaways of their child on the swings and nice family mementos. A problem we faced here was Tom forgot to replace the camera battery and SD card, so shortly after arriving to the park we were no longer able to use the camera, so it cut the shoot very short, but we still able to get a few shots in. As the sound supervisor, I had to ensure the soundtrack we record was avoiding any copyright issues, and for this reason I decided to hire a guitarist to record original soundtrack pieces for us. I created a brief for the guitarist to follow as a guide to help him visualise what we were expecting. I kept in contact with him throughout the process, where he sent over footage of draft cuts of the soundtrack. We also gave him feedback. Other members of the team were also able to contribute towards the sound. For example, the day of the shooting I was unable to be present, so this was resolved easily by one member recording on the day. Other members of the team were also able to contribute towards the sound. For example, the day of shooting I was unable to be present, so this was resolved easily with one member recording on the day. Our main issue we faced was being unable to book out a sound studio where I initially wanted it recorded, and did not have enough time to book out any sound equipment for the guitarist, availability being very restricting. This was resolved by using someone close by to us who was trained in the music department, who was able to help with recording, ensuring the quality was professional. I also assisted in editing, where I helped provide feedback to Daniel, where cutting the interview. I edited the intro montage, credits, ending montage of their child. I also worked on the image resizing and specific details throughout the project, amongst my sound editing responsibilities. Problems I faced while sound editing was the levelling. Hearing it on a computer is different to hearing it on screen, and I found it difficult to get the levelling accurate.